I have a few things to share with you before we continue. And I don't think I've shared with you these things before. So I'm going to first begin with my discussion with Amal Kiran on how to read Savitri, which I think is very important. It's not very long, but I'll share it with you. He says, quote, read slowly with an awareness that there is a meter, that is, long syllables, short syllables, and a combination of them. Meter means that there is a design, a pattern, and the fact that the poetry is divided into lines means that each line has to be felt in a certain shape. So there must be a short pause after each line, even if the sense of the line continues into the next. This is very important. Savitri is special in its meaning and message. It has a certain rhythm, which is at the same time like all other poetry, and with a subtle difference. And its special character makes it what Sri Aurobindo calls overhead poetry. That is poetry which comes from planes of consciousness above the mind. Sometimes the sense is dependent in a delicate way and with a subtle point on the way the line is read, in tune with its distinctive character. An example, a cry to clasp in all the one God hush. Now mark the change which comes when the line is read as a cry to clasp the one God hush in all. In the first example, it is as if something is definitely said. But if one read the line as a cry to clasp the one God hush in all, it is as if the first version we have to discover the one God hush. In the other version, the one God hush seems a self-evident truth, and it is a truth which is not to be found, but as if it were self-existent. When we scan the two slightly different arranged lines, we feel that in the first case, a definite fact is stated. In the other case, we feel that there is a subtle revelation between what is actually stated. So with that, we will begin today. And we see that we are now at a point where page 106, we have this kingdom of subtle matter where Ashwapati Sri Aurobindo is traveling, and he's climbing these stairs of consciousness, and he's seeing all these different planes of existence. And he says, till in the naked ether of the peaks, the spirit's simplicity alone is left, the eternal being's first transparent robe. Very, very interesting. Because when we see that he has to come back to this mortal load, this hard ensemble of Earth's experience, then its return resumes that heavier dress. So let's go through those few lines. But when it must come back to its mortal load and the hard ensemble of Earth's experience, then its return resumes that heavier dress. The ensemble, of course, something is considered together in relation to the whole. And it's a hard ensemble in this Earth's experience. We all know that. We all know what we have faced in this climb that Sri Aurobindo says is very, very difficult. And Aurobindo Basu would tell me it's a hard, slogging discipline. And indeed it is. It is a very, very hard, slogging discipline. And the return of the eternal has to resume that heavier dress. Sri Aurobindo tells us that Mother, as the divine creatrix, has to come down and bear the burden of an earthly body, which she did not have to bear when she was universal, but she bore it for us so that the essence of the divine could be experienced physically. And we did experience that physically in the mother's body. Now, of course, we have to experience it in her cosmic and transcendent self, but she has also not left us. She has not left us at all physically, and we can contact her at any moment. We can invoke her into our inner being, and she will be there, leading us through all the difficult experiences that we have to go through in our way of ascending to the supramental. For long before Earth's solid vest was forged, by the technique of the atomic void, a lucent envelope of self-disguise was woven round the secret spirited things. Well, we all can feel this actually. Before this solid garment, this robe or this gown of Earth's, this solid vest of Earth was forged. And it was forged by the technique of the atomic void. And Sri Aurobindo has much to tell us about this void, but I believe we read it before, so I have to continue on. A lucent envelope of self-disguise was woven round the secret spirit in things. Well, this is very interesting. He hyphenates the word self-disguise. Of course, lucent means translucent, clear, giving off light. So it is an envelope of self-disguise that is woven around this secret spirit in things. If we open the third eye of experience, if we are given insights by the Divine Mother to things that are in the ether or above our five senses, our normal senses, we can see this secret spirit in things. Many of us have seen these things. I have experienced them with Nolini when he would come to me week after week after week at night and teach me things that even today my mind cannot grasp. And perhaps it shouldn't try to grasp those things because they are above the capacity of the mind. So Sri Aurobindo continues on in this journey, in this book of the Traveler of the Worlds. The subtle realms from those bright sheaths are made. So we see that this lucent envelope of self-disguise that is woven round this secret spirit in things has made these subtle realms from those bright sheaths of this divine technique of the atomic void. We also see, as he continues on, this wonder world, hyphenated wonder world, with all its radiant boon of vision and inviolate happiness, only for expression cares and perfect form. Most interesting. Fair on its peaks. Oh, what a wonderful line. Fair on its peaks. It has dangerous nether plains. Its light draws towards the verge of nature's lapse. It lends beauty to the terror of the gulfs, and fascinating eyes to perilous gods, invests with grace the demon and the snake. So we see this world, this plane of existence that he's on, although it looks fair on its peaks, it has dangerous nether planes. And he says it's a wonder world with a radiant boon of vision and inviolate happiness. Something that's inviolate is unable to be profaned. And still, it only cares for expression and perfect form. And even though it's fair on its peaks, it has dangerous nether planes because its light draws towards the verge, the edge, the border of nature's lapse. And in doing that, it lends beauty to the terror of the gulfs and fascinating eyes to perilous gods. Perilous is dangerous, fraught with danger. Invests with grace the demon and the snake. So it endows with authority or power the demon and the snake. So we see that this world, which is only really concerned with perfect form and expression, it is a wonder world, no doubt, and it has a radiant boon of vision and an inviolate happiness, but it is a dangerous world. And as Sri Aurobindo goes further into these planes of existence on this world stair, he will go down also into the depths. And that is not going to be an easy canto to read. But after that, after he brings the light into those depths, he will again rise. And by the 14th and 15th cantos, we will see what he has achieved. So we continue. Its trance imposes earth's inconscience. Immortal, it weaves for us death's somber robe and authorizes our mortality. Well, this seems very dark, but it's not that dark because its trance imposes this inconscience upon earth. The trance, of course, is a semi-conscious state. It's a kind of a hypnotic daze. It can be sometimes an ecstatic state also, or a deep musing and absorption, a rapture or an ecstasy. It can be many of these things, but it imposes on the inconscience of the earth, and immortal, it weaves for us this somber robe of death and authorizes our mortality. So it is confirming death, that we are born, we live for a short time, and we die. And therefore, it authorizes our mortality. But what is Sri Aurobindo going to tell us next? He says this medium, he calls it a medium, serves a greater consciousness, a vessel of its concealed autocracy. It is the subtle ground of matter's world. It is the immutable in their mutable forms. In the folds of its creative memory, it guards the deathless type of perishing things. Its lowered potencies found our fallen strengths. Its thought invents our reasoned ignorance. Its sense fathers our body's reflexes. Lot to go through here. Lot to go through. We'll begin. And we'll see that this medium that serves a greater consciousness. Now, we know that a medium is a kind of substance through which something else is transmitted. And this medium, therefore, serves a greater consciousness. And we've done consciousness, I think, a few times before. So a vessel of its concealed autocracy. Now, autocracy is interesting because it's unlimited authority or even power or influence. It's a kind of absolute government. So a vessel of its concealed autocracy, it is the subtle ground of matter's world. And Sri Aurobindo tells us matter is by no means fundamentally real. It is simply a structure of energy. This is so important for us to grasp. And not so easy to grasp in the mind, but science has understood it. Science says that everything is in movement. There are all of these atoms in slower or faster movements, creating things that we define as a table or a desk or a chair. So we see that this creative energy in matter is simply a movement of the power of the spirit. And this vessel of concealed government or authority is the subtle ground of matter's world, because it is in matter that the divine is concealing himself, which is why Sri Aurobindo tells us that we have to worship the divine in the animate and the inanimate, because it is not a different divine. The stone has its own purpose in the world. It may be to us inanimate, but the divine is within it. And as Blake says, to hold heaven in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour. So this is the immutable in their mutable forms. In the folds of its creative energy, what does it do? It guards the deathless type of perishing things. Now, we think that something dies and it doesn't come back. We see the plant flower and then the winter kills it. And we know that it's been killed, it's dead, it won't come back the next spring. But in the Akashic records, and Sri Aurobindo has been through them very carefully, we see that everything that has happened on the earth is preserved there. And we know that nothing has truly perished. So there is a deathless type of things that seem to perish. And its lowered potencies are strengths, potentialities, efficacy, found our fallen strengths. Well, they found them, they create them. It's not found as in something we find, but to found is to create something, our fallen strengths. And its thought invents our reasoned ignorance. Well, our mind always has a reasoned ignorance. And its sense fathers our body's reflexes. Fathers here is a figurative word meaning creates or originates our body's reflexes. Vladimir, I've talked too long. Can you say some words about this passage?
Well, this is interesting that the eyes, fascinating eyes to perilous gods, are given from the spirit and invest the grace with grace the demon and the snake. That means actually the sacrifice, when the divine force decided to give itself to the inconscient, to start this redemption process of them getting something, some glimpse of that grace, and starting to pay back, actually, to grow in consciousness, because they didn't know how to do it. They, without that example, without that self-giving of the divine. It's the same theme is going throughout the Savitri of charging the darkness with the light and bringing it back to its self-awareness.
Thank you. I'll just do a few more and then we'll give it up for today.
I have a question here.
Yes, certainly, Falguni.
When it says the medium, is it talking about just matter in general?
The medium.
Yeah.
This medium, this intervening substance, he's speaking about a substance that transmits something or carries something. And we have to go back some lines to find out what it is. Well, if we go way back, we see that it's a wonder world that transmits all of these things. Even with its radiant boon of vision, its inviolate happiness, its only caring for expression and perfect form, it still has dangerous nether planes. And that medium draws us to death's somber road. And yet it serves a greater consciousness. And what is that consciousness that it serves? Well, it's the subtle ground of matter's worlds.
And
Yes, please, go ahead.
I thought that medium here is that body which is built, those drapes which were put around, layer upon layer, until we come this is the technique of the atomic void, the creation of ether at the end, and finally that space in which everything will be manifested in terms of bodies. So this medium serves a greater consciousness, this medium of embodiment, yes, which took place. This is a vessel of concealed autocracy of the supreme power of the consciousness. That's how I read. Maybe I'm wrong, but It is the subtle ground of matter's worlds. It's just confirming the same idea. It is the immutable in their mutable forms. So the immutable spirit is the mutable forms, and mutable forms are the medium of his autocracy, of his power, of his manifestation. In the folds of its creative memory, it guards the deathless type of perishing things. So this is an amazing vision of interaction of the immutable and immortal spirit with the mortality in time and space, and how one is the medium of the other and means of manifesting the spirit.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, I see still that it is this something that is transmitted,
Mm.
this medium.
Mm.
And it's transmitted from this plane of existence.
Mm.
And yet it's as it's transmitting it, it is serving a greater power, a greater consciousness.
Mm.
So
Thank you.
very good. You're welcome. And thank you all for attending today. We'll carry on, not next
Next
week. I
time.
think next week we will be in the retreat in South Carolina. So it will be the week after this
Mhm.
when we have our next Savitri Sunday. Namaste all. See you all. And some of you, I'll see you very soon.
Namaste.
Namaste.